Okay, so my name is Chad Hoffman, and this is Dr. Jordan Barkley. He is the Senior Associate Provost at Tarleton University or Charleston State University in Stephenville, Texas. So, Dr. Barkley, if you will, what is just a little bit of personal biographical background information?
Okay. So I started my career 22 years ago as a middle school English and history teacher in Opelika, Alabama, Opelika Middle School, and taught for 5 years, seventh grade English and history, and finished a master's in reading and a PhD in reading. Picked up Alabama certification to be a reading specialist and also Alabama certification to be a public school administrator. After 5 years, I moved to Jacksonville and was an assistant professor in secondary education there. Did that for a couple of years and then was asked to serve as the department head for secondary education. Did that a couple of years and then was asked to serve as the associate dean for the College of Education and Professional Studies. So all told, I was at Jacksonville State for 9 years. So left Alabama at 14. Have been in Texas the last 7.5, almost 8 years. Came out here to be the dean of the College of Education. I did that for 5 years, and the last 2.5 years I've been in the provost office serving as a senior leader.
Okay, awesome. What are some experiences that shaped you as a leader?
So I will say as early as when I was a classroom teacher, I realized that you don't have to be a principal or a superintendent to be a leader. You can be an instructional leader. And so I realized through the work that I was doing with practicum students from Auburn University that you could be an instructional leader. That's actually what made me make the jump from teaching middle school to teaching to teaching college. I thought, here I am working with 100, 125 seventh graders every year, or I could work with pre-service teachers who then go out and work with 100 to 125 students a year. So I saw that as a way into leadership. I knew that I would sort of be in administration. That's why I picked up the administrative credential when I was working on my doctorate at Auburn. I don't know how to say it other than to say I've just kind of always been drawn to leadership. I'm never satisfied with someone else telling me what to do all the time. I kind of like to be one of the people who gets to make that decision. So found my way into leadership at JSU really quickly. The interesting thing, I shared this past week, was I learned fast not to tell anybody what you did not want to do, because that's actually how I found the leadership opportunity. Was I said, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I don't want to teach assessment and I don't want to teach research. And those were the two classes they asked me to teach first at JSU. But those are also the two classes that led to me being department head and then the assessment coordinator for the college, the NCAPE, now CAPE, coordinator. Which is how I found myself as associate dean. Other leadership or situations that have shaped me is, so while I was department head at JSU, and since I've been out in Texas as a dean, I've found myself in lots of situations where it's my job to give people feedback on performance. So performance reviews, or, both summative and formative. And I do think that, so that it's a skill that I've honed. I can give people constructive criticism and oftentimes difficult to hear feedback, and it's not personal. And so it makes the conversation palatable, and, everything is fine at the end of the conversation. I've not shied away from any difficult conversations. I've terminated a fair number of people, even in tenure track roles. I've remediated people who are in tenure track roles. I've hired them. I've promoted them. So it's been a learning experience for sure. I was just sitting here thinking, so I would venture to say that I learned something about leadership every year the past 22 years.
Yeah. So, in addition to you being a professor of mine and then department chair or department head, also worked with you as in the orientation realm as a Gamecock orientation advisor, so advising students. We never worked like directly together, but as faculty members and as orientation leaders, we all work together all summer long in that role. So, what are like some, even in education? I've only been in education a short 13 years, but what are some like lasting impacts or differences that you've made that you have come to realize? I mean, over 22 years that you've been in.
So I'm glad you brought up the orientation piece. I think a lot of times people fail to remember as leaders that our core mission is to serve students. And I am convinced that the work that I did with Gamecock orientation and student success initiatives at JSU were paramount in my ability to move to Texas into the A&M system and serve as a dean. Certainly as a dean, student success was a huge factor for me. It was a guiding principle for me. And then when I took this job or took this role as associate provost, I had the opportunity to actually reorganize the division. And we created what we call University College, which is a non-academic college, but focuses exclusively on student services, student support success. So it has advising, it has peer mentoring, it has counseling, it has career services is in there. Supplemental instruction, tutoring, any kind of student support, exception of professional counseling that lies in student affairs. We were able to put it all in one college. And I would say, I've helped lots of groups become accredited. I've evaluated programs all across the United States. I've started big ventures, new degree programs, capital campaigns, raised all kinds of money. But the thing that I'm most proud of is the work that we've done with student support. Because at the end of the day, I can say I feel like I'm a good leader because I don't just recruit students and try to retain them. I recruit them and try to retain them. And I make sure that my entire staff serves them along the way so that we're not just in the business of taking tuition dollars. We take tuition dollars, we offer a quality education, and we offer the supports that students would need.
Yeah, and I think the student success piece is gaining more and more traction nationwide because JSU is completely redone their student success with Dr. King, and they're hiring 32 different advisors to serve, and so in each of the colleges, and it's going to be a big thing. So I think it's gaining traction, nationwide because students, with COVID and the pandemic and everything like that, the value of a college degree isn't there like it was when we, students don't put a lot of value in that. So
right.
I'm trying to get them to understand.
They're purchasing a different experience than I purchased when we were in school. And I think they're much savvy consumers than you and I were. And so now so what guarantee are you going to offer that I'm going to be successful? So what are you going to do to help ensure my success? And it's been frustrating at times for students to treat us like they're consumers, but at the same time, it's probably one of the best things that happened in higher ed, especially during the pandemic, is students said, okay, I'll take a gamble. I'll invest in tuition and I'll come to your university. But what are you going to do to make sure that I'm
Okay, so due to technical difficulties, we're going to start part 2. So if you want to continue with what we're talking about with student success.
I think I was just, if I remember where I was saying that, because of the pandemic, we have a different kind of student who is much more of a consumer and is wanting to know, what's the value of what I'm purchasing, but also what kind of guarantees are you going to offer that I'm going to be successful? And that's, though, like the university college set up for all of the student successes is one of the things that I'm proudest of as a leader.
So you mentioned earlier, I mean, and we talked about the orientation stuff and then, helping people remediate and get better. And then also ultimately, sometimes termination occurs. But then you also mentioned about helping different programs or colleges with accreditation and all that. So what just stands out about the aspect of communication with you in relationship to the organization or leader?
So I interviewed for a job last week, and I shared with them when they were asking me about leadership and management style that my good friend Lisa Williams, who's there at JSU, told me when I was interviewing to be department head a long time ago. She said, I love the servant leadership stuff you're talking about. That's all great. She said, but Jordan, at the end of the day, you've got to remember you are hired as a department head to make a decision, not count votes. So everybody gets to have a say, but everybody didn't get to vote because we don't have the luxury of casting a ballot all the time. And so I look at communication as the way to ensure that a leader is making good decisions. And so from the time I was a department head to associate dean, out here to dean, and now as associate provost, my job is to communicate openly, honestly, effectively, constantly with all of the university constituents so that when I am called upon to make a decision, to change a policy, to enact something, I can do it confidently knowing that I am representing what the majority of the people or what the popular opinion is or what the unpopular opinion is. I know when I make the decision that it's an informed decision. It's not a guess. It's not it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission kind of situation. So two things that I tell leaders when I train them on our campus is one, you have to remember that your number one job is to manage resources. If you don't manage resources well, you're not a good leader. And two, if you are not of the people and with the people and for the people and by the people and all of those people statements, then you're not a good leader. If you're not willing to talk to people, if you're not willing to listen to people and hear their concerns, whether you feel like they're valid or not, you can't really represent people. And as a leader, that's what you're hired to do. Now, a manager, I would argue, is something very different. A manager pushes papers. A manager counts things, and there's a checklist. And, so anybody can be trained to be a manager. You can manage a process, but we don't manage people, we lead people.
So getting all those people to work together harmoniously, how do you seek to do that? Because
so first, you just have to understand that it's not going to happen. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't try, but I don't live in la la land. So, again, I think it comes down to communication. And if you clearly communicate a vision to a group of people, you can constantly go back to the vision statement when people are upset or angry because their point of view is not the popular one or their idea is not what's latched onto. I've had to do that over and over. I mean, you can't lead a college with 120 faculty and 2,500 students and expect to make everybody happy about everything. But what you can do is constantly remind them what your goal is. And if your goal is to serve students, so for example, in the College of Ed, to serve students and prepare teachers, you don't have to like what we're doing, but unless you can convince me that what we're doing is not going to fulfill that mission, I'm not changing my mind. And I have said that to plenty of people. Change my mind. That's your job. My job is to make a decision. Your job is to change my mind. And if you feel very strongly about it, let's talk it out. The other thing I think that helps when you're trying to lead a large group of constituents, and I mean, so I had 7 departments in my college. There's no way all 7 are going to love every decision that we make. It's just sitting down and talking through, why do we need to do what we need to do? And can you live with that? And what does that look like? And then my philosophy with my department heads was always, we can talk about anything you want to talk about in this room in the department head meeting. And then once we make the decision and when we go out the door, I expect everyone to toe the party line, because I have to do that as a university official too. So, there were plenty of times I had to do things that I didn't want to do as a dean, but it was not my job to lead through chaos. It was my job to lead through consensus. And so I registered my objection or complaints. We opened the door, we walked out, we're all on the same page. That's what a healthy organization does.
Perfect. So we're going to end on this note, which I think I have a good sense of. But how did you discover your purpose in life? And were you called into leadership, or did you seek it because of your convictions that you held?
So I feel like you creeped on my interview with this university earlier this week. That was honestly the best interview question I've ever been asked in all of the positions I've ever interviewed for. And he said to me, I've read all your stuff. I've watched you online. I've listened to you online. I've read your CV, your cover letter, all of your stuff. And you're relatively young. And his question was, talk to me about what happened during your formative years before early adolescence. Something happened to you to help you realize this is what you want to do. Because I don't think people are just born into teaching. I don't think people are born into leadership. I think it's something that you have to develop. But I do think there's something that happens along the way that makes you realize this is what I want to do. And I shared with him that, so I'm a middle child. And if you're a middle child, then we have all kinds of issues, but so do the firstborns and so do the babies. And I do believe that because I was a solid middle child, meaning there was an older brother and a younger sister, and both of them gravitated toward a parent, I was sort of left to my own defenses to find my people. And about 8 or 9 years old, I found my people at school. And I remember coming home thinking, I cannot believe that perfect strangers have the capacity to care this much about people that they don't know, and that I like them that much. I mean, I remember Mrs. Yarbrough was my 3rd grade teacher. And I remember going home thinking, I can't believe she doesn't even know me. She doesn't really know my family, but she cares that much. And that's when it started for me. That's when I thought, okay, I know I'm going to be in education. And then once I got into education, I realized, okay, so teaching is very noble and I love it. And I think when I retire, that's probably what I will go back and do again. I want to be the really old teacher who just really doesn't care about any rules and stuff and just teach. And, everybody else can worry about stuff and I'll be like, send me home. I don't care. But I realized when I was teaching that, so instructional leadership was huge, but building level and school level leadership, university level leadership is where I could make the most impact. Because you could take, like when you were in my class, I could take a group of prospective students and say, let me share my experience with you. I hope it helps you become a better teacher. And then I look now at the number of y'all who are still teaching or who have moved into leadership of some kind or going on to pursue a doctorate. And I see the cycle just going. It's like you spend your time in the classroom and then you decide, this is good and I'm fulfilled, but I could do so much more if I stepped out of this lane and got into the leadership lane. And that's just followed me every leadership position I've ever had. I mean, I'm experiencing that right now. So I was a dean for 5 years. And I remember going to my provost and saying, I'm getting bored. I've not accomplished everything in the world you can accomplish, but I've done a lot in 5 years and I'm ready for something new. I'm ready for something exciting. What challenges do you have? And we had a guy leave and she said, why don't you come be my associate provost? And I said, okay, sign me up. And now she's retiring. And like I shared with the guy that interviewed me earlier last week, I'm just ready. I think when you know that you're ready to take the next step. I'm not going to lie and say it's not intimidating. I think the day that the next step stops being slightly intimidating is the day I don't need to take the next step because I'm clearly too confident. But I think it's just a feeling that you get. I remember when I taught y'all talking about the art and science of teaching.
Mhm.
And there's an art and a science to everything that we do: leadership, teaching, singing, drawing, whatever, math, anything has an art and a science. And the science is what we worked on in the classroom together. So the science of teaching reading, the science of planning lesson plans and unit plans. And, that's the science part. The art, I don't know that anyone can develop. I mean, I know you, and I know that you possess the art of teaching and leading, but I've also seen lots of people who don't. They understand the science of it, and they can read all the leadership books there are. They can watch all the leadership videos. Like when I was preparing classroom teachers, I used to say, y'all can watch Harry Wong all you want. That's the science. That's the logistics of what you want to do in the classroom. But if you don't have the art inside, it's just the feeling that goes along with teaching or leading, you're going to struggle. Mm-hmm. And when I said earlier, I had to counsel some people through difficult situations, that almost always was the case. Look, you're solid. You're a solid professor. You know science, math, education. But if we were in a hospital, I would say your bedside manner stinks. The art of being a doctor is bedside manner. The science is the medical school you have to go to. So
right.
I do think there are things you can do to develop the art. I don't think you can teach it, but I think you can develop it. We tried with y'all to create a series of experiences to put you in classrooms where you had the opportunity to hone the art of the craft. Mm-hmm. And I honestly feel like every single time I'm in a leadership position, I look at it like one of your practicums or your internship is, what am I supposed to learn from this? What experiences am I supposed to have? And what part of the art of the job am I honing? What am I developing? Right. So that's kind of my philosophy on art and science of leading.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today. And we'll end on a little perfect note there.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good luck with class.